Hello, thank you for joining us again. In just a few moments, we're going to begin reading Chapter 3, Bastion Street, subtitle, Skitter Hitter. But, before we get started, there's a few things I'd like to talk about. Actually, just one thing. Someone online has been disliking my YouTube videos. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you are looking for ransom money, I can tell you that I don't have any. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills that I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you go and remove the unlikes from my YouTube videos right now, that'll be the end of it. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you. And I will tell you how much it hurt my feelings. And hopefully, you will apologize. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and start with Chapter 3. Alright. Chapter 3, Bastion Street, Skitter Hitter. Now, some things to keep in mind is this chapter starts with a big event, and then it goes back and kind of explains why that event happened. Alright. Maybe if Pia Foster had known yesterday when the bell rang and she ran to her locker, grabbed her skateboard, and started kicking down the hall of Vladimir Middle School, the wheels rolling and scratching over the floor sounding like the chugga-chugga of a small train, that the journey home would be different. She wouldn't have been in such a hurry. Maybe she wouldn't have ignored her classmates moving out of the way, sucking their teeth, all annoyed by her decision to dart through the crowd as if riding on an arrow no one wanted to be struck by. Shot from a get-out-of-school bow no one could see. Maybe she would have excused herself, apologized for almost clipping ankles or running over toes. Maybe she would have walked, for once. Maybe even stayed after and talked to Fawn Sams, the only other skater she knew. The only other skater who was a girl. The only other skater she respected. Maybe Pia would have tightened wheels with her. Talked about deck art, stickers, sneakers, maybe practiced tricks in the parking lot after all the buses were gone. Heel flips, kick flips, maybe watched videos on their phones. Videos of Santi hitting ollies in a dress and pumps. Maybe Pia would have even told Fawn about her, about Santi, about what happened to her. Fawn would have listened. Might not have said nothing, because Fawn didn't talk much either. But she would have listened, for sure. She would have heard her. Maybe Pia would have done all this. Or maybe not. Maybe if she wasn't so soft-spoken. But she was. And the skateboard, like so many skaters, was her voice at its loudest, saying, "Get out the way or pay." She named her board Skitter and called it She. Maybe if Stevie Munson had known yesterday the skateboard's name was Skitter, he would have said something. Maybe if he'd have known Pia's name was Pia, if he'd have known she'd had a big sister named Santi, maybe he'd just known these things. He would have done something. Something different. Something at all. The bell rang at Brookshire Boys Academy, and an ocean of testosterones crashed into the hallway, green ties swinging like polyester tails coming from their throats, matching pants and blazers, white dress shirts with soggy collars from all the neck sweat and faded red splotches on their chests from the ketchup that missed their mouths. But Stevie's shirt was stained from lots of things. Food, sweat, magic, marker, Marcus. Marcus Bradford was a box-faced baseball player who who wrote stuff on the back of Stevie's shirt almost every day. Stevie was a sweater, so he always took his blazer off in class to avoid becoming a washcloth, something to wring out. But the Oxford button-downs he wore underneath the blazer were all 2 sizes too big because his mom couldn't afford to buy new ones every year. School was already expensive enough, so the uniform he'd have to grow into. "Everything will fit eventually," his mother would say, but the fabric was always so blousy and poofed away from Stevie's body in a way that made it impossible to feel Marcus's pens and markers gliding across the cotton. So Marcus used Stevie's shirts like locker room walls for jagged graffiti and curse words. And maybe if yesterday Pia had known his name, Stevie, maybe if she had shaken his hand and said, "My name is," and he'd say, "My name is," she could have read his face, read his fear. Maybe he could have read hers, or maybe not. Either way, Pia would have taken her house key from around her neck and clutched it with the teeth jutting between her fingers, a fist knife, just in case. Maybe Stevie wouldn't have been there at all yesterday with Marcus and the boys if he hadn't tried to figure out a way to get them to leave him and his shirt alone. Telling wasn't an option. Snitches get stitches and sometimes ditches. That's what Marcus said the other day when Stevie found out Marcus had drawn a green penis on the back of his shirt. Greenus written underneath. Maybe Stevie wouldn't have even been there with them if his mother hadn't asked him what he was doing with all the bleach. Why was he using so much of it? "Not that I'm not glad you're washing your own clothes, but detergent and bleach ain't free," she'd say. And what Stevie couldn't say was, "I'm sorry, but there's a boy in my school drawing on my clothes." Because then his mother would say, "I don't send you to private school for boys to draw private parts on your private uniform that you still have to grow into. And do I need to call the principal?" And Stevie didn't want to hear none of that. Stitches, remember? Maybe even ditches. Besides, Mr. Brock, the principal, already knew. He'd seen the pictures and words, and all he ever said was, "Boys will be boys." But whether Stevie told his mother about Marcus or not, yesterday, Pia still would have taken that way home. She still would have kicked down the hall, dashing through the crowd on her skateboard, ignoring all the teeth-smacking and slick talk and Miss Walkley yelling, "No skating allowed," feeling that freedom she was used to. The kind of freedom that comes from feet not touching the ground, coasting through the school door, weaving and winding across the pavement, riding the asphalt wave, avoiding the bus waiters and the pickup parents, the orange sashes of safety patrols, and the sound of a whistle blown by the crossing guard. A whistle Pia never listened to because skating meant freedom. Rules were for the classroom, where teachers would say things like, "Participation is part of your grade." But Pia wasn't a participator. Not in school. She spent most days daydreaming about frontside 180s while scribbling her sister's name on the deck. The S, a geometric trick that looked more like a pointy 8, the way Santee always wrote it. And thinking about how much it sucked to roll an ankle, and yet rolling an ankle was way better than Miss Broom calling Pia's name to ask her to explain what some old guy she never heard of meant in a story she never read, but was supposed to read just because Miss Broom said she was supposed to read it. Pia was always ready to go, to cut into the wind and float down Portal Avenue toward Bastion Street. Pit stop at the skate park, skate down Santee's sidewalk, roll toward home. Okay, a little break right there. So, right now, we've met 3 main characters. We have Pia, who's a female skater, and she goes to Latimer Middle School. We have Stevie, who's the boy that has to wear those bigger shirts, and he goes to a private boys' school. And he's being bullied by a kid named Marcus, who's drawing with magic markers on Stevie's white shirts. And Stevie's afraid to tell his mom. So what Stevie is doing is washing the clothes with bleach, and his mom is getting onto him. What are you doing using all the bleach? So that's kind of what's going on right now. Pia's a skateboarder, Stevie is a kid who's getting bullied, and Marcus is the bully. All right, let's get started. We're at the bottom of page 60. Stevie was never ready to go, because to go meant to get got by Marcus and the boys. There was one time they grabbed Stevie by the tie and yanked it so hard that his neck was sore for a week. They called it snatch the tail off the donkey. The triangle knot had been pulled so tight that undoing it was like trying to unravel a rock. So he cut it off, buried it in the bottom of his backpack, a dead fabric snake. He told his mother he lost it, and she lost her mind. I don't send you to private school for you to lose ties. I send you there for you to be able to make them one day, she yelled. But she knew her son, knew he was the kind of kid who would lose the brown off his skin if he closed his eyes for too long. Another time, when Stevie wasn't paying attention, Marcus and the boys ran up on him and threw a cup of water all over the front of his pants. Then they cupped their hands around their mouths and announced to as much of the world as possible that Stevie had pissed himself. And even though Stevie said he hadn't, pleaded it like his life depended on it, they talked over him, howling and shrieking, Yo, you pissed your pants! Everybody! This fool pissed himself! Stevie was so embarrassed that he almost matched their joke with the real thing. And then there was the time Marcus decided he needed to practice his wrestling moves, the ones he watched on TV. And who better to practice on than Stevie? The kid never saw it coming. A body slam, an elbow drop, a pile driver, a pin on the sidewalk, 1, 2, 3. While the other boys threw their hands up and cheered like audience members and taped the whole thing on their phones. Viral. So Stevie was never ready to go. Until yesterday, when Marcus and the boys finally offered him freedom. Pia saw them yesterday. She was used to seeing them, and they were used to seeing her, but they never said nothing. Normally, they stepped to the side and let Pia skate by. It was usually only 3 boys standing alongside the fence at the skate park, but this time, 4, dressed in green. And if Pia hadn't known Marcus, she would have thought private school guys were automatically good. She would have thought their ties had made them mature. She would have thought they lived perfect lives, in perfect neighborhoods, in perfect houses with clean windows and green grass. Grass even greener than their jackets. Houses that smelled like coffee in the morning and popcorn at night. But she knew Marcus. Marcus's mother owned the salon that Pia went to whenever her mom made her get her hair done, which was mainly for the holidays and when they had to go over to her grandmother's for dinner. And her mother had learned a long time ago that the only way to get Pia to go to the salon without kicking was to let her take Skitter to the skateboard with her. Let her kick that around the parking lot until it was her turn in the chair, so that Pia wouldn't have to sit for hours flipping through old magazines filled with fancy advertisements of stick figure models with bodies pretzeled up, printed on paper that smelled like perfume, Santi wrote. When she was smaller, Pia would stuff the pages, and once, when the salon was really backed up, she sniffed and sniffed until the strange mixture of glue, ink, and flowers made her nauseous. She puked all over the salon floor. That was when her mother had finally given in and allowed her to bring the board with her. At first, whenever Pia'd skate back and forth across the parking lot outside the salon, Marcus, who was always pouting while sweeping up the hair inside the salon, would come out with her. One time, he asked if he could ride Skitter. Pia kicked the board over to him. Marcus put one foot on the deck and steadied himself. And as soon as he lifted the other foot, the board flew out from under him. He caught air before slamming to the ground, only to find that his pants had split up the middle and his superhero briefs were on blast. But Pia didn't laugh. Instead, she tried to help him up. But he couldn't take her hand, cover his butt, and wipe his eyes at the same time. He never came outside with her again except for one day, years later. And on that day, he didn't speak to her or ask her to ride her skateboard. He just sat on the curb and watched, but pretended he wasn't watching as Pia kicked harder than usual, sailing over the asphalt, grinding her board against the curb, scraping it like she hated it, almost violently, attempting tricks she knew she couldn't do, rocketing to the ground over and over again, then getting back up, getting back on, ignoring Marcus's fake chuckles. She could never forget that day. It was the day she was getting her hair done for her sister's funeral. A jacked-up French roll with what felt like 200 bobby pins that started itching as soon as she left the chair. Pia felt that same itch when she saw Marcus and the boys yesterday, when she saw the knots at their throats and felt a knot in hers, because she knew Marcus. She knew where his mother's black eyes were coming from, where her swollen jaws and forehead lumps were coming from, because that same day, Pia sat under the dryer 2 years back. After her wash and before the French roll was put in, she heard her mom ask Marcus's mom when she was going to leave Marcus's father. When the dryer whirring in Pia's ears, it sounded like the two women were whispering in a tornado, but Pia could still hear them through the storm. I ain't trying to get in your business, Lydia, I swear. And if you tell me to mind my own, I will. I mean, with Santi's death and this one here, I got more than enough to mind. But I can't sit here and pretend like I don't see what I see. And I'm definitely not about to act like I don't care about you, Lydia. You and Marcus. So I gotta ask you, before this man kills you, when you gonna leave? Okay, so we found out two little things in that part that we just read. Two big things. One is that Pia has a sister who passed away. And the other thing is Marcus, the school bully. At home, his dad is abusing his mom and him. So he's going through some things at home, and it sounds like Pia has definitely been through some things as well with her sister passing away. Okay, let's continue reading the chapter. When Stevie realized yesterday that the girl skating down the street was going to be a target, and that target would be the ticket to him being left alone by Marcus and the boys, accepted as one of them, he got nervous, nauseous. What are we doing? He choked on his words. Just playing a game, Marcus said, grabbing Stevie's shoulder like a baseball to be fastballed at Pia. But Stevie had a curveball in mind. Told Marcus he wouldn't do anything to her. I don't want you to do nothing to her, Marcus scowled. Just take her skateboard, that's all. The boys lined up, became a wall on the sidewalk, and Pia thought about hopping the curb to go around them, but knew better than to skate into oncoming traffic. She'd cut it close before, too scary. So Pia reluctantly put a foot down, dragged her sneaker along the concrete to slow down, then stomped the back of the skateboard, flipping it up into her hand. Excuse me, she said politely to Marcus. Excuse you, he said back, puffing his chest. Pia never looked down, looked each boy in the face. Each of them looked back, except for one. The new boy, Stevie, looked everywhere else. To the left, to the right, up and down, anywhere but at her. Let me borrow your board, Marcus said. Just for a second. My man been working on a trick, and he wanted to show us. Marcus nudged Stevie. He don't look like he skate, Pia said, sizing Stevie up. I bet he skate better than you. Marcus stepped toward her, yanking Stevie with him. Stevie looked like he was about 2 seconds away from vomiting the bones out of his body, leaving him Nothing but a skin suit laying on the sidewalk. Pia could smell Stevie, a peachy musk, stronger than the perfume in the magazines. He was sweating through his blazer, and before he could answer, Marcus reached for Skitter, grabbed the board, and yanked it. But Pia wouldn't release it. After a back and forth, Pia gripping the board with both hands. Marcus tried a different approach. He let go. And Pia stumbled back but didn't fall. Balance. But Marcus was right there to do the gravity's work. Shoved her to the ground. The skateboard flew up from her hands and skidded into the street, where a car horn blaring rolled over it. "Oh!" the boys howled as the wooden plank split, their stupid excitement splintering Pia's skin. Her voice cracked, broken in half. She got up and ran, mind racing, thinking about Santi. Stevie chased behind her. Pia ran faster, thinking about Santi. How she was pushed off her board by a boy. Stevie stopped running. Pia ran home, thinking about Santi. How the boy was just mad Santi was a better skater than he was. Pushed her into the traffic, thinking about himself. Oncoming traffic. Had Stevie known that's what it would take to be one of Marcus's boys, he wouldn't have come yesterday. Or maybe he would have, but he would have said something. Would have stopped Marcus. Why didn't he say anything? Why didn't he stop it? That's what he asked himself as he walked back down the sidewalk. That's what he asked himself when he tipped into the street. His hand up timidly as traffic slowed down for him and picked up the cracked halves of the skateboard. He held them like he was holding a broken heart, looking around only to find that Marcus and the boys had left him, like the suckers they were, like the sucker he was. And maybe, if Pia had known Stevie had picked up the pieces of her board, maybe, if she'd known that he took them home with him, maybe, if she'd known that he finally told his mother about Marcus, told her where all the bleach was going, why he had to wash his clothes every day to try to remove the stains and marks and words inked into his uniform, showed her the tie that he'd cut off his neck and hid in the bottom of his bag, the one that he said he'd lost, explained why he hadn't had an appetite, why his grades were slipping. Maybe if Pia had known that he told his mother what he'd just done, what he didn't do, what he'd just seen. Maybe if Pia had known that his mother struggled to hold back a scream, helped him tape the deck back together, punished him, sent him to bed, woke him up early this morning for extra chores. Maybe if Pia had known that his mother, after meeting with the principal, pulled Stevie out of school early, drove him to what they guessed was Pia's school, the only public school in the area, sat stuck in traffic lecturing him, paying no attention to the news on the radio. A school bus had fallen from the sky. Made him stand outside the entrance and wait for Pia awkwardly. Maybe, if Pia had known that Stevie was coming to apologize for his silence, maybe, just maybe, Pia wouldn't have left through the back door today with Fawn to walk to the cemetery to visit Santi's grave and ask her questions, hard questions about boys. So, in that chapter, we find out a lot of background information about a lot of the characters. Stevie, Marcus, and Pia. It kind of gives us a full picture of their lives and the struggles that they go through. What I'd like you to do is make sure you answer the questions on Schoology. Tomorrow, there'll be a video posted for the deeper dive questions.